What would you do if you heard footsteps shuffling behind you in a completely empty warehouse at 3 a.m.? Or if you saw someone standing outside your night duty window, only to realize that person died decades ago in that very spot? Tonight, we share 3 chilling accounts from night shift workers who learned the hard way that when the sun goes down, some places awaken things that were never meant to be disturbed. The question isn't whether you'll believe these stories, but whether you'll dare to work nights after hearing them. I'd been working as a night supervisor at a distribution center on the outskirts of an industrial city in Pennsylvania for 3 weeks. The shift was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and honestly, the extra pay for working nights was worth it. The building was enormous, with endless aisles of metal shelving that stretched into the gloom, lit only by fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly. The first time I heard it, I thought I was imagining it. It was around 2:30 a.m., that time when tiredness starts to play tricks on you. I was checking inventory in aisle 34B when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate steps, with an odd rhythm, like someone lightly shuffling a foot. I turned expecting to see Kevin, the other security guard, but no one was there. The aisle stretched empty in front of me, the shadows cast by the boxes creating angular shapes on the walls. "Kevin, is that you?" I called. My voice sounded strangely flat in that space. Silence. I returned to my work, but an uneasy feeling had settled in my stomach. Over the next few days, the footsteps became frequent. Always at the same time, always in different hallways. Sometimes they came from above, from the metal walkways that connected the upper sections of the warehouse. Kevin confessed to me that he'd heard them too, but preferred not to think about it. "This place is old," he told me. "The buildings make weird noises." But what happened on Friday of my 4th week had no rational explanation. It was 3:15 a.m. I was in the second-floor administrative office, filing reports, when the warehouse lights began to go out in sections. One after another, like dominoes falling in the darkness. I watched through the office window as the darkness swallowed the space, moving closer to where I was standing. The emergency generator should have kicked in, but it didn't. I grabbed my flashlight and went down the metal stairs. Each footstep echoed too loudly in the silence. I reached the warehouse floor and shone the light down the hallways. That's when I heard them again. Footsteps. But this time they were multiple, several sets of feet moving in unison, approaching from different directions. My heart began to hammer in my chest. The light from my flashlight trembled in my hand. I backed toward the wall, trying to illuminate all the hallways at once. And then I saw them. Figures. Dark silhouettes moving between the shelves. They didn't exactly walk, more like gliding, with that same shuffling motion I'd heard. They were tall, too tall, and their limbs seemed disproportionate, as if their arms were longer than they should be. I ran for the stairs. Behind me, the footsteps quickened, multiplying. I took the steps 2 at a time, the metal vibrating beneath my feet. I reached the office, slammed the door, and shoved a filing cabinet against it. My breathing was erratic, my shirt soaked with cold sweat. From the other side of the door, I heard something that chilled my blood, the sound of hands, dozens of hands, dragging themselves along the metal door. And then breathing. Heavy, wet, just on the other side. I don't know how long I spent there, huddled in that office. When the lights came back on at 5 a.m., I radioed Kevin. He came running, finding me still shaking. I told him what I'd seen, but his expression told me everything I needed to know. He knew something. 4 years ago, he finally told me, there was a fire on the night shift. 7 workers died in the East Wing. They were trapped when a shelving unit collapsed and blocked the exits. He paused. They said it took hours for them to die from smoke inhalation. Security cameras recorded them trying to get out together, moving in a group. I quit that same morning. But sometimes, at night when I can't sleep, I still hear those shuffling footsteps. And I wonder if they really stayed in that warehouse, or if some of them came home with me. 3 years later, the warehouse closed permanently. Night shift workers reported similar experiences so frequently that no one would take the job. The building remains empty, but nearby neighbors say they can sometimes see lights moving inside in the early morning. My name is Sarah, and for 6 months I worked as a night cashier at a gas station on Highway 49 in rural Kentucky. It was one of those forgotten places, surrounded by dark fields and dense forests, where you could go for hours without seeing a single car. The pay was decent and I needed the money for college, so I took the midnight to 6 a.m. shift without giving it much thought. The first few weeks were quiet, boring even. I spent my nights reading, rearranging products, and watching videos on my phone. Occasionally, a truck driver would come by to get gas or buy coffee. The owner, an older man named Earl, had given me simple instructions: keep the door locked, answer from the night service window, and if anything felt wrong, call the county sheriff. Everything changed on the night of October 14th. It was 2:47 a.m. I remember because I had just checked my phone when I heard the gas station bell ring. I looked out the window and saw an old car, a dark blue sedan from the 1980s, pulled up to pump 3. It was strange because I hadn't heard the engine or seen the lights approaching. The car just sat there. I waited for someone to get out, but no one did. 3 minutes passed. The light above the pump flickered, casting eerie shadows over the vehicle. Finally, I grabbed the intercom microphone. "Good evening, do you need service?" Nothing. The car remained motionless, its windows darkened. I couldn't see if anyone was inside. A chill ran down my spine. Something about that scene felt profoundly wrong. The air itself seemed heavier, colder, even though the station's heating was working perfectly. Then the driver's door slowly opened. A figure got out of the car. It was a man, or at least he had the shape of a man. He wore a dark suit that looked soaked, and his hair was plastered to his skull. He walked stiffly, mechanically, toward the store. With each step, he left wet footprints. I could see them glistening in the lights. My hand instinctively moved toward the phone. "Excuse me, sir, we're closed for internal service. I can take your call from here," I said over the intercom, trying to keep my voice steady. He stopped in front of the glass door. And then he raised his face to me. I can't adequately describe what I saw. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were completely black. There were no whites, no irises. Just emptiness. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Only water, dark water dripping from his lips. I stepped back from the counter, my heart pounding. He pressed his hands against the glass, and I could see his fingers were wrinkled, swollen, as if they'd been submerged for days. The glass began to fog up where he touched it, but it wasn't normal condensation. It was a dark liquid that spread in patterns that looked like words. Help, cold, dark. My breathing became shallow. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed. He tapped the glass once, softly, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Then he walked back to his car with that same stiff gait, leaving a trail of water that smelled of silt and decay. The sedan started without turning on its headlights and disappeared into the darkness. Not toward the road, but toward the open field. It simply vanished into the blackness. Shaking, I called Earl. He told me to come home immediately, that he'd cover the rest of the shift. When he arrived 20 minutes later, he inspected the front door. The wet marks were still there, but the smell was overwhelming. Dead fish and mud. The next day, I did some research. I discovered that in 1987, a man had died in an accident on Highway 49, right across from where the gas station now stands. His car went off the road during a storm and ended up in a pond. It took 3 days to find the body. The car was a blue sedan. I continued working there for 2 more months, but every night I looked toward Pump 3 in terror. It never returned, but sometimes on rainy nights, I could smell that stagnant water smell seeping through the windows. And occasionally, I found wet footprints near the door, as if someone had been standing there, watching, waiting. Sarah left that job 3 years ago. The gas station still operates, and night workers have reported seeing the same blue sedan. The last cashier who quit said that one night, the man didn't stay outside. Somehow, he made his way right up to her window. And when she turned around, He was pressing his face against the glass, dripping that dark liquid slowly. My name is Marcus, and before you ask, yes, I accept that what I did was a bad decision. But when you're 22, saddled with student debt, and need cash fast, you're not very picky about jobs. That's how I ended up accepting a position as a night security guard at the old St. Mary's Hospital on the outskirts of a small town in West Virginia. The hospital had closed 15 years earlier after a series of scandals involving medical negligence and alleged malpractice. The 5-story building was set to be demolished, but legal issues had delayed the process. In the meantime, the city needed someone to keep vandals and squatters out. The job was simple: patrol the perimeter, make sure the doors and windows were sealed, and report any suspicious activity. Mr. Patterson, the contractor who hired me, was blunt. Don't enter the building. Ever. Stay outside, do your rounds, and I'll pay you double the standard rate. When I asked him why he paid so much, he grew uncomfortable. Let's just say other guards haven't lasted long. Personal issues. I should have taken it as a warning, but the money was too good. My first night was Tuesday, March 3rd. I arrived at 10 p.m., with the sun already setting behind the surrounding hills. The hospital was an imposing red brick structure with boarded-up windows and faded graffiti on the walls. A rusty metal fence surrounded the property, and the only lighting came from 2 posts with spotlights that barely penetrated the darkness. The first 3 hours passed uneventfully. I walked around the building every 30 minutes, shining my flashlight into the sealed entrances. The silence was absolute, interrupted only by the wind rustling the branches of the dead trees surrounding the building. But around 1 a.m., I began to sense that something wasn't right. There was a presence. I can't explain it any other way. A constant feeling of being watched, of something following me just out of range of my light. Every time I turned sharply, there was nothing. Just shadows and the silent building rising against the night sky. Then I heard the music. At first, I thought it was coming from a nearby house, but we were in the middle of nowhere. It was a soft, distorted melody, like an old music box. It came from inside the hospital on the 3rd floor. I could see a dim light flickering behind one of the boarded-up windows. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but curiosity and perhaps a touch of youthful stupidity prompted me to approach. I circled to the emergency entrance at the back. The metal door was ajar, the chains securing it cut cleanly, as if someone had just done it. I pulled out my radio to call Patterson, but all I got was static. I also had no cell phone service. I was completely isolated. The music continued, now clearer, a repetitive, haunting children's lullaby. I pushed the door, which opened with a metallic groan. The inside smelled of damp, mold, and something else, something sweet and nauseating that reminded me of rotten meat. My flashlight revealed a long hallway with cracked tiles and peeling walls. Corroded medical signs still hung. Radiology, operating room, morgue. Every fiber of my being told me to turn around, but I followed the music. I climbed the stairs, the echo of my footsteps resonating in the void. 2nd floor, abandoned offices with rusty gurneys. 3rd floor. The music was louder now. There was blood. Fresh blood on the floor, forming a trail that led to a door at the end of the hall. The nameplate read Pediatrics. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. The door opened by itself. The room was lit by candles, dozens of candles arranged in a perfect circle. In the center was an old wheelchair, and in it a small figure. A boy, his back to me, wearing a stained hospital gown. Music came from a music box in his hands. He spun it slowly, the melody distorting with each rotation. Hello. My voice sounded pathetic, broken. The boy stopped turning the music box. The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, very slowly, he began to turn the chair toward me. And when I saw his face, my mind nearly broke. He wasn't a child, or he had been one long ago. His skin was gray, stretched over his skull like old paper. His eyes were empty sockets, but I felt like he was looking right at me. His mouth opened, too wide, revealing black teeth. And he spoke in a voice that seemed to come from far away, from some deep, cold place. Why didn't you help me? The candles all went out at once. In the pitch darkness, I heard the wheelchair moving toward me, squeaking with each rotation of the wheels. I ran. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, hurtling down the stairs, stumbling, banging into walls. Behind me, the sound of the chair chasing me, faster than should be possible. I left the building, crossed the parking lot, and didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked. My whole body was shaking, tears streaming down my face. I looked toward the hospital and saw figures in every third-floor window. Children. All of them looking down at me. Patterson called me the next day. I told him I was quitting, that I'd never come back. There was a long pause before he spoke. Did you go up to the third floor? When I told him I did, he sighed heavily. That's the problem. Everyone goes up to the third floor. In 2003, there was a fire there. 27 child patients died, trapped. They said the nurses locked them in when they evacuated. I hung up without another word. It's been 2 years, but I still can't listen to music boxes without feeling my heart stop. And sometimes in my nightmares, I hear that voice asking me over and over again, "Why didn't you help me?" Because the truth is, there is no answer. There never was. St. Mary's Hospital was finally demolished in 2024. During the demolition, workers found something disturbing on the third floor. 27 small wheelchairs arranged in a perfect circle with a music box in the center. No one could explain how they got there. Marcus never returned to West Virginia. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked an overnight shift and experienced something you just can't explain? Those footsteps you heard when you knew you were completely alone? That shadow you saw moving out of the corner of your eye? Or maybe that client or coworker who appeared and disappeared without a trace? Leave your story in the comments below. It doesn't matter if you work in a hospital, a gas station, an office, a warehouse, or any other place during the early morning hours. I want to read every one of your stories, and who knows, your experience could be the next story I feature on this channel. And if you know someone who works nights, share this video with them. But do so at your own risk. They may never look at their workplace the same way again. Don't forget to give this video a like if it kept you on the edge of your seat, and subscribe to Untold Nightmares if you want more true horror stories that will make you question what lurks in the dark. Turn on that notification bell because I upload new content every week, and trust me, the next stories are even more disturbing. Well, my fellow nightmare dreamers, we've reached the end of this chilling journey through the dark halls of the night shift. I hope if you're listening to this while working the wee hours, you're not too scared to finish your shift. Just remember to check corners, listen out for those strange sounds, and if you see something that shouldn't be there, well, maybe it's best not to look twice. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Untold Nightmares. Remember, reality is always scarier than fiction, and these stories are proof of that. Until next time, if you survive the night, sweet nightmares.